So, we have, how did you describe Mark earlier, John? Ranty southern bloke. The other side of the coin to the ranty northern bloke.
Are you sitting down? Or?
Well, it depends. How angsty are you? How ranty are we going to be? How much space do we need?
Do you know what, actually, I've got to say, Chris, the lovely event, but I have no idea why you've put me on last after all that inspirational, uplifting stuff. So that I can just go, doom, we're all going to die.
Yeah, I think your diary is the answer to that. That's all right. No, it turns out it's a fairly important conversation. Are you happier standing than sitting? Should we stand?
Let's stand. Why not? Right. Then I can dance. I'll do it through interpretive dance instead of words.
I promise not to. If you're going to do it through interpretive dance, we might find ourselves sitting down fairly quickly. All right, so obviously we know each other, but who are you?
My name's Mark Davyd. I am the CEO and founder of, heckled already by the child at the back. I am the CEO and founder of Music Venue Trust, which is a UK registered charity that looks after just under 1,000 grassroots music venues in the UK. We represent their interests. We look for opportunities to build them up. We look for opportunities to get changes at government level, get more support for them. We negotiate with local authorities and all kinds of things. Do a lot of work within the industry about artist conditions, how venues and artists and managers and agents can work together more effectively.
Amazing. So kind of upskilling and developing a cohort of people who might otherwise not talk to each other but need similar skill sets and need to have the same conversation with government to try and make things less bad than the government seems to make them for us just now.
What government?
We've got the choice of a few to talk about. I mean, there's some ground to cover on what governments have done over history, and what they could probably do next will be our upbeat finishing note when we talk about VAT again. And energy bills. And happy.
In about 4 hours, I would guess, probably a little bit less than that. They're going to appoint the 10th Secretary of State for Culture that I've had to deal with since we started this organisation in 2014. It'll be the 4th Prime Minister, the 4th administration, the 3rd administration trying to deliver Brexit. No Secretary of State for Culture has lasted longer than 20 months. And that was Oliver Dowden, because they couldn't sack him because of COVID and they didn't know who else to appoint. But other than that, marvellous example of excellent government that we should all aspire. And do we have any Conservative voters in the room before I really go off on one?
I think maybe at the start we have Conservative voters. Hopefully by the end.
Yeah, I did see 3 or 4 people look out going, oh no, it's him. We're politically neutral, believe it or not. However, we're a charity, but there is a worse form of government than left or right, and that is incompetent government. And I don't think I'd be misreading the attitude of the room and of probably the whole industry if I said that I think we've gone through 6 years of probably the most incompetent government that's ever been in this country, frankly.
I think if we leave competence out and just look at harm, still like that. If we just look at measurable harm.
Yeah, we have a funny voting system in this country where we do vote for the least amount of harm that might be done to the most amount of people. That's an odd way to run a country anyway. But, quick round of applause for Nadine Dorries, all you big Nadine Dorries. Oh, no, silence again. What a surprise that is. I think the lack of interest, John's thing was great to give you a précis. We would love to work with a government where at least the Secretary of State for Culture was interested at all in the jobs, the economy, the intent of what we do. It's great to walk in through Heathrow and see huge posters saying Britain is great, Britain is music is great. I travel around the world talking this sort of rubbish, and you see the British music industry trying, frankly, to promote British music overseas, and then you come back to the crashing down to earth reality of it. It is very, very difficult at this point for a struggling new and developing artist to play a gig in Paris, which we've done to ourselves. So I don't have a lot of sympathy for a government that we repeatedly have told them things and explained what could be done. John's work, the work that's being done to try and get us back to where we were in 2016, well, I mean, I don't want to come across as the last remainer in the room, but why do it in the first place is the question I would ask. So,
okay, so in the absence of our time machine,
then we have to. That's the issue. The work that we do, we have to deal with the reality of who's in place. So, for example, we've been working on this issue of VAT for some years. The reason is the VAT rate on tickets in the UK is the third highest in the whole of Europe. It is way above any of our international partners in any competing music market. It takes money directly out of the pocket of artists, especially at the lowest level. And to give you some comparable rates, the rate in French grassroots music venues, which I could talk about for 4 hours, strap yourself in, get a few drinks, but they pay 5% if they pay VAT, but half of the network doesn't pay any VAT on ticketing at all. Now, for those of you who don't know what that means, in the deals that agents and venues do, artists are always on a percentage of the tickets sold at the end of the show. Well, they're on a percentage of everything in this country, less 20% VAT. That's been one of our big ones. We have a fairly unique situation in this country where our grassroots music venues almost uniquely amongst all of our cultural infrastructure for years paid full business rates. Theatres don't pay full business rates. Art centres don't pay full business rates. Cinemas get a business rate break, everything like that. It's only live music venues where we go, yeah, they can pay full business rates, as though these sort of venues are cash cows for unscrupulous behaviour, which they're not. I mean, I don't want to spend I don't want to spend half an hour with you just moaning. There's lots of great stuff about grassroots music venues, but the thing you need to know about where we are in 2022 is Tim from the Fibbers in York, a much loved and now sadly gone venue, used to have an email signature, and on it said, "How do you make £1 million running a grassroots music venue?" Answer: start with 2 million. And that's the reality of these venues now. There is a tiny, if any profit margin at all. Most of it is in the wet sales, not in the tickets. In 2019, shall I get stats heavy?
Oh, go on. I love a good
In
stat.
2019, this sector, these 1,000-ish venues, invested £160 million into new and breaking artists through putting on live shows. And for that, they received £122 million in ticket sales. So they invested £38 million of their own money, effectively, in putting on live music. How do you change those numbers? You change them by things like getting rid of the VAT on tickets, not making them pay business rates. You've got to bring down the costs of the venues because we are as far as we can go. The job of these venues, and I think it's the most important job there is for me. I'm incredibly passionate about it. I spent my whole life in these size venues. I love to stand 5 foot away from the band I haven't seen yet and see them hit their banging new song I've never heard before, while the sweat of the singer hits me in the face with about 12 other people, and all of us feel like we're really special. That's my sweet moment, and also bragging about it 20 years later. That's my other sweet. I saw Adele with 14 other people, and she silenced the room. She was supporting Jack Peñate, if anybody remembers Jack Peñate. And she came on at Tunbridge Wells Forum, which is the venue I own, in front of 14 people, and we were all kind of hanging around near the back, picked up her acoustic guitar, started singing, and everybody went, "Oh, wait, what?" like that. And you knew straight away. Those bits of experience, those are my sweet spot. I don't think you can recreate it. Any festival owners or arena owners in the room, I'm not here to slag you off. I just don't get the buzz from standing at the back of 100,000 people going, yeah, I can nearly hear that, but mainly I can hear the bloke next to me who appears to be 3 tones flat. I love to see the small band in the small venue at the point where they're really energetic and desperate to make it. That's the bit of music I love the most. I also love to see music I absolutely have no idea what's going on. That's the best type of music, isn't it? When you're standing there and you go, what kind of music is this? Because then you think, well, this is going to be expanding the cultural bubble. But there's a back end to that. Sorry to keep on talking, Chris, but there's a back end to that.
If I stop enjoying it, I'll interrupt you.
Right. The back end to that is, just think about that for a moment. What are these venues selling? They're selling a product nobody likes yet. That's their job. That's when do they do their job the best? They do their job their best when nobody's heard of the band. When the guy who runs the venue, the team that run the venue, the booker, says, nobody likes this band yet, but I'm going to put them on because somebody should see them. That's the job of these venues. But what does that mean? It means that nobody wants to see the band. So actually, that's when they're doing the most important work. That's when they're doing the job for everybody in this room. That's when, if you manage artists, that's the venues you need. So they'll put on the artists that you've just seen and they'll give them the chance. But it's not a saleable product, and it's why so much of our industry relies upon you all drinking beer. It's very, very difficult to sell tickets to see something like that. What happens when you can sell tickets? I've been in the industry a long time, can you tell? But the job of the music industry is, once everybody wants to see that act, is to take them the hell out of that venue and put them in a bigger space with more people and make it economically viable. So we have a product nobody can really make a lot of money out of, but what you can do is you can make it economically viable to run these venues. We can get rid of a lot of the really stupid things that they're asked to pay for. We can align them with the rest of culture. We can make sure when artists turn up and are expecting fresh lobster, that they understand that that's the reason they're not getting paid. That actually there is a way to run these venues that is more like a research and development department, more like it respects what they're actually doing when they're doing that really important job for us.
Well, I mean, if only there was an argument that said local venues get people out their houses, get them into the local community, get them onto the local high street, get them spending money somewhere else.
Well,
It'd be handy, wouldn't it?
You're leading me in with answers. I mean, for every £10 spent on a ticket in a Grassroots music venue, £17 is spent elsewhere in the local economy, on transport, on pubs and bars. And come on, you've all done it. Should we go and see the band? Yeah, I'll meet you in the pub. And then you finish there. I used to be much fatter than this, and I'm quite proud. I've lost quite a lot of weight. But when I was fatter, I used to do this thing about kebabs. I used to stand in front of people in rooms and say, listen, how do you protect the kebab shop owners of Camden? Make sure you open the Roundhouse. Because I've been to the Roundhouse hundreds of times, and I've eaten hundreds of kebabs after coming out of the Roundhouse. I've never left my house at 11:30 at night to go and get kebab.
I have, but don't judge me.
That's how you provoke economic activity that we want to see in our towns and cities. The other point about that is, as we've seen the collapse of this sector, we lost over a third of these venues closed down between 2007 and 2015 when we were created out of that crisis. What does that actually mean? Well, right now, we did this piece of work 3 years ago before COVID.
Mark, at the same time, pubs were closing at 45 a week or so. There's a lot of pressure on hospitality all around. So music venues were hit by part of that. What, cheap alcohol supermarkets and people?
Yeah, there's loads of contributing factors. Honestly, when we did the report for Mayor of London in 2015, even student loans came up. Right. How do you crush the ability to take a risk on seeing a new band, make somebody pay an enormous amount of money for a student loan? Yeah. Make them feel like every penny really matters, so they won't take risks with what they're doing.
Look, if you want to go and look at the festival headliners around the world, look at them all, whatever stage of their careers they're at, look at any stage you like. We aren't building festival headliners. We may be building recording artists or streaming artists, but we're not building festival headliners where a huge amount of money is made for our industry in live. We're not building those through these new tech platforms. I'm not saying that will never happen, but I'm just saying there's something innate about the skills that you learn by standing in Bromsgrove on a Tuesday night in front of 6 people and a dog, trying to persuade them to like your new record.
It is.
And we've been banging drums together as a community activity for about 40,000 years at least. And I don't expect that that's going to stop anytime soon. I think people are always going to want to get together in a room like this and watch somebody perform something that engages them or speaks to their life in a way that is thrilling and exciting and causes them to connect with that artist in a way that they're, in my opinion, and you're all younger than me, so not except John, but you're you're entitled to believe there may be a kind of digital future, but I haven't seen it. I'm just telling you that
but
people are
there
building.
will be a digital future, but it's incomplete.
Yeah, it doesn't have that. If somebody can create, I saw you had a thing on the metaverse. I'm sorry I missed that one earlier. What does a metaverse Glastonbury look like? Because I'm not clear on that, and I wish I had seen the panel. I'm sure somebody's got some great ideas, but it's hanging around in your room with a thing on your head, pissing in a ditch outside your own house, drinking warm lager when you could be drinking cooler. It just doesn't roll together for me.
I feel like at that point you're doing it wrong. But I'll tell you what the risk is with it for me.
Yeah.
So I lived in Amsterdam during lockdown. We had an 8 p.m. curfew. You go for dinner, you're watching the clock. 20 to 8, yeah, I'll have another glass of wine. Not about a glass of wine. Cycle home at a pace to beat the police home. And then you're suddenly like 8:03. I'm at home on my own. This is not fun. And that is an interesting one for the metaverse for me. Like, how do you prolong the experience to actually have it not just come to an abrupt halt when you take your goggles off or when the moment finishes? Yeah,
and you know, I'm full of stories. I've had a horrible day. All right, everybody's thanks. A horrible day shouting about energy prices, which I will do 2 minutes on. But a horrible day shouting about energy prices. So indulge me while I spin off on one. About 4 years ago, my venue down in Tunbridge Wells was 25 years old, and every time it's a 5-year anniversary, we throw a little party. And about 3:30 a.m. in the morning, as I was staggering around to something by Depeche Mode, looking like I own the place, which I do, and demanding...
Sorry, do you own a venue in Tunbridge Wells?
yeah. And demanding that I have another bottle of Jack Daniels because one was not enough. This kid, no more than... She can't have been more than 18 years old maximum. We've got a very liberal entrance policy down in Tunbridge Wells. She came wandering up and she said, "Oh, you must be Mark." And I said, "Yes, how can you tell?" And she said, "Oh, I just wanted to say thank you." And without any pause, I went into the kind of ranting you're seeing here. Well, grassroots music venues, you know, all that stuff. And she just carried on looking at me for about 4 minutes. And then she just said, gently put her hand out, like put her hand on my shoulder and just said, "Oh no, none of that. It's just my parents met down here 21 years ago, and I was born as a result of them meeting down here, and so I wouldn't be alive if you hadn't opened this venue." So my thing is, how do you prolong the human species? Open more grassroots music venues.
There we go.
All right. So if you don't take nothing else away from this, it is about that community spirit. If I'm trying to sell you anything, I'm trying to sell you that. Is this being recorded?
Yes, but not streamed, so you're safe for now.
Okay, promise me you'll blip this point out.
I'm getting guest list for
I'll tell you
life
something. I'll tell you something I very rarely tell anybody. After the Brexit result, this is honestly true. After the Brexit result, we ran a heat map of where we have heat maps of like where activity is. And we map all of our venues. We have 950 something, I think, of them. We have them on a heat map. Don't stop recording. I can see you putting on live social media. And we mapped where had voted for Brexit and where had a grassroots music venue. And it was exactly the fucking opposite. People who live in these left behind places that we need to do something about, that felt they had no play in society. They felt so badly left out, they voted against being part of an international collaborative. Whether you believe in that or not, that's the impact of not having community spaces. That's the impact of leaving these communities behind. That's the impact of not actually giving them access to culture, aspirational experiences, inspirational artists. If you're not on the tour circuit, you want to live somewhere else.
Right. So what we're going to do is change gear in a moment. We're going to do two problems, and then I'm going to stop talking to the politicians in the room. I'm going to talk about why grassroots music venues are the future of developing talent, building community, and then we're going to get drinks.
Good plan.
Energy prices. What the...
So, I mean, just... so just to explain there is, I don't know how much you know, but there is no price cap for businesses. None at all. Businesses are on the commercial energy market, and your energy company can charge you any amount that they like for your energy, and you can accept that quote or you cannot. the concept, and I had this is what sent me to Parliament today. I had a letter from Jane Hunt, MP, from Bays, I think, and she wrote to 5 of our hospitality organisations and said, but the energy market will cause prices to be kept under control for those businesses. At which point we all basically marched down there and started grabbing hold of MPs and saying, that's a great idea, but as of Thursday last week, there isn't a single supplier on the market prepared to quote for new hospitality business. You have to stay with your existing supplier, and they can send you any quote they like, and your choices are turn your electricity off and close, or pay the amount of money they want.
And we're not talking about a 100% increase, which would be horrific, obscene, and enough.
No, the one that went viral for me on Twitter on Saturday, which you should never get a viral tweet. Your phone goes in a meltdown. It's horrendous. But I had a venue that were £10,000 more. Let's do big figures. £10,000 a year was their energy bill for the last, pretty much the last 3 years. They were locked in for a contract. They went to market, their contract was expiring. They went out to market to get a new quote for their energy. Nobody would quote, literally not a single energy company in the whole country would quote. They had to go to their company, which I'll name, it was British Gas. British Gas offered to supply them their electricity for £144,000 a year. And they would only do that if the venue paid 25% deposit up front. They wanted £36,000 to carry on supplying them with energy.
So more than 3 years of historic energy use, paid up front from the cash.
Paid up front in cash before they would carry on supplying with energy.
From the national trend setter.
Yeah.
Superb.
So John probably knows, you've seen all the WhatsApp groups, have you? I mean, no.
He's been busy today.
We understand that on Thursday they're going to announce that they will cap all of your energy bills, which should be light relief for you at least, and they're going to do something similar for energy, but what we haven't managed to get out of them yet is exactly, it's all down to kilowatts per hour, like a unit. Traditionally we've paid somewhere between 15 and 25 pence. The latest bill that we saw, and the one I quoted John earlier, I saw one that was actually above £2 a unit. £2.14 I think it was, which was a new, the one on Saturday was £1.76 a unit.
All right, Mark, we've got to get to the happy thoughts. Before we
well,
do.
The happy thoughts are, I'm getting a 9th culture secretary, and maybe this one will give a shit.
Are we going to say it can't be worse than the 8th? Bless Nadine. Last bit of bad news for music venues in a state of emergency, ownership structures.
Yeah, I mean, this is a piece of, I mean, by the way, I've given you 40 minutes of desire. We have been working for 8 years.
It feels like longer, mate.
Feels like longer, all right. But we've been doing this work for 8 years. I should tell you the reverse of that. We have created the first ever network of these venues where they speak to each other all the time. They're in constant contact. They're supporting each other. Good practice is spreading through these venues really rapidly now. So I'm sure a lot of you have seen the FAC 100% merch campaign. I'm ethically opposed to artists paying fees on their merch. I think it's wrong and we shouldn't be doing it. That's just my opinion. But we've managed to sign hundreds of venues up to that agreement with FAC, where we will no longer charge merch fees for artists. We can do that.
Get a round of
now.
applause for that. That's pretty
good. We can do that now because we have this very strong collective and collaborative organisation that's bringing good practice in. I'm able to say this. We're working very hard on equality, diversity, inclusion. I mean, my own team, I'm the lone token white male. That's good, isn't it? As a start. They should get rid of me as well, then we can have a proper organisation.
I've heard they're working on it.
Yeah, they are actually. I got it out of one of my young female, but definitely wants my job, and I'm determined to give it to her, so that'll be good. I can go home and have a lie down. We're doing loads of work on lots of different things, and there has been major change. You probably all know the venues have been closed down by noise complaints. A few years ago, we got the planning framework changed. If you are a developer, you can no longer build next to a music venue without consulting with that music venue about the problems that your development will cause to them. And the responsibility to pay for that is now falling on the developer rather than on the venue. We are working with local authorities to adjust the way that they handle noise complaints so that a noise, in specifically, I'll give you one, writing 316 letters in 40 days, one person will not result in a noise abatement notice, which is what happened to the Night and Day in Manchester from the previous occupant. They've now got another new one. But so that kind of work is all starting to build it. Here's my stat to show that we're not all doom and gloom. In January 2020, I was able to stand on a stage like this one and say that for the first time in 20 years, there were more grassroots music venues trading in the UK than there were the previous January. And that's the first time that had happened. And it wasn't just because of me and my team, it's because the sector really got its shit together. In those 8 years, we pulled them all together and they started saying, okay, I've got this deal, I've got that, I'm working with these people, oh, let's do it this way. So there is a big movement coming from us. Chris just mentioned ownership. I know I've gone probably over time.
Oh, that's all right.
Our big new one that we're doing is underlying all of these issues is the problem that these venues emerged organically in the strangest of places. My own venue is built on a toilet. Genuinely, it was built in 1932 to be the largest toilet in Europe. Others are in a boat. There's one in a shed.
I like that ambition.
Yeah.
What are you going to build, guys? Biggest toilet?
Well, I shouldn't. Should get some drinks. It was made 1 foot longer at one end because they found out there was a really large toilet in Hamburg. There you go. I told a German audience that they thought I was joking. But anyway, so the moment we're dealing with ownership, we have a project out on the market called Own Our Venues. 93% of this sector are tenants, and that means they have a private landlord, and it means the private landlord is trying to make money out of his building. I say he, by the way, because when we surveyed it, we literally couldn't find almost any female owners, and the ones we did find were the best ones. So there you go again. This is the problem we face. We've let this sector emerge organically. Now we need to sort out these problems. We're trying to buy 9 venues at the moment. We're trying to raise £3.5 million from the public, from music audiences. We're working with a lot of artists on this. I've got investments from Sony, from Warner's. Lots of nice big companies are putting money in because we want to change the ownership model. We want the money that goes in those venues. Ultimately, I would like to get to the point where running one of these venues is almost cost-free. And at that point, we could do really serious work about promoting and supporting new and developing artists in an economic way that makes sense. Because I've told you about venues, but you all know that when you put an artist out for their first tour, that artist is almost definitely losing money. I don't think it actually has to be like that. I think it can be much, much better than it is. I'd like to get to the point where when you're breaking your career, you're not building up such level of debt that that earlier one about when you sign, and I think that 30% that was described at the beginning of your career, we could really be part of that and be helpful in supporting it rather than be a tax on it effectively.
Well, absolutely. And one of the arguments that John and I have talked about from a live point of view is that at the moment record companies talk about how much they invest. And we don't get the investment argument out of the live industry in the same way. But where do you go to sign them? Oh, go to the show.
Well, I mean, I would say the importance of the live work for artists really came home in COVID. I mean, I'm very fortunate. I've done a load of different things. I was a manager for a long time. The number of artists that had to come to me and say they had lost in excess of 80% of their income because of not being able to tour and play live. And you're like, okay, but actually in our industry, live only accounts for 25% of all the turnover. Where's the other 75%? You know, what are we doing when there's all this money? That's an entirely different conversation, isn't it? Open the bar.
Well, I'm working on it. If I could get a word in edgeways, I'll tell you. But no, state of emergency currently, getting people out of the house is the remaining bit. So how do you get people into local venues? We've talked about it a bit in different contexts today.
Do you know? I think it will take a little time. I saw John's thing about people's attitudes and everything.
Great research that.
Yeah, great research, Chris. I went to 7 shows last week.
Nice.
The atmosphere was absolutely superb.
Amazing.
People are out having absolutely the time of their lives. They're really back into it. The challenge is getting over that little hurdle you identified where people are reluctant to go to the first one. Yeah. But it's still one of the best ways to spend your time. You know, you go along to the gig, you see the band that you really have been waiting to see, but you also get to see a couple of other bands that you've never seen before, and one of them will spark something. And so it's just that I'm a convert, you know.
I like it. On that rare optimistic note, I'm kicking you off my stage.
Jolly good.
Mark, thank you very much indeed for joining
Thank you very
us. Be around
much
for
for
a
your
bit.
time. Really appreciate it.